So this is going to be a really creepy last story. Hopefully you guys enjoy. And without further ado, let's get into it. The Man in the Window. When I was 15, my family moved into this old house on the outskirts of town. It wasn't exactly a haunted house, no eerie past, no tragic history, just an old, creaky building that felt off in a way I couldn't explain. My bedroom was on the second floor with a window that overlooked the backyard. It wasn't much of a view, just overgrown grass and old rusted swing set from the previous owners, and beyond that, dense woods that stretched for miles. It was the kind of place where you never felt alone, even when you were. The first time I saw him, it was around 2 a.m. I wasn't sleeping well, just scrolling through my phone in the dark, when I got this feeling. You know, that heavy, gut-dropping feeling that someone's watching you. My window was cracked open slightly, letting in the cool night air, and I had that urge, this stupid one, to look outside. And there he was. A man standing just beyond the swing set, half in the shadows of the trees. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there facing my window. His posture was stiff, unnatural. Even from a distance, I could tell something was wrong with him. I stared, frozen. My brain was scrambling for explanations. Maybe just some guy passing through, maybe a trick of the light. But then he moved, not normally, not like a person. His body glitched forward, like a bad stop-motion animation, a few feet closer. Then again, closer. His limbs didn't move, but he was getting closer. I slammed my window shut and yanked the blinds down so hard they nearly ripped. My heart was pounding out of my chest. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I told my mom about it. She brushed it off. Probably a deer, she said, or your imagination. I wanted to believe her, but I knew what I saw. For a while, nothing happened. Weeks passed. I started convincing myself that maybe it really was just my imagination, but then I started noticing things. Little things. My window slightly open in the morning when I knew I had closed it. The backyard swing moving just barely when there was no wind. The feeling of being watched, even in the daylight. Then came the scratching. It started one night around 3 a.m. A faint, slow scratching against my window. Not loud, just enough to wake me up. I laid there, paralyzed, staring at the ceiling, refusing to look. It lasted for maybe a minute, then silence. I wanted to believe it was just a tree branch, but there were no trees near my window. The next morning, I checked the glass. There were marks, long, thin scratches like fingernails. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up watching my window, waiting. At around 3 a.m., the scratching started again. Slow, deliberate. My heart was hammering so hard I could barely breathe, and then a whisper. Right outside my window. Let me in. I don't remember screaming. I just remember running to my parents' room, shaking and barely able to get the words out. My dad checked outside, but of course there was nothing there. No footprints in the dirt. No sign that anyone had been there at all. We moved about 2 months later. My parents never admitted that they believed me, but I think they did. Because in the weeks before we left, my dad started keeping a gun by his bed, and my mom stopped sleeping with the windows open. I don't know what I saw. I don't know what it wanted, but sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone, I swear I can still hear it, scratching at the window. A voice on the phone later, but he had no clue what it could have been. Anon goes hiking. Be like maybe 13 or 14. Just moved from a densely populated city to 60-acre farm in the middle of nowhere because parents wanted to for some reason. So fuck it. Having a housewarming party with a group of friends from the city one afternoon. Walking around the property behind the house to explore and goof off. Start walking further than I had tried to previously to that point with friends. Had only been living there maybe a few days. Get to a clearing just past the bow of a hill and right outside where the woods started. Friends are running around and chasing each other with sticks or whatever stupid middle schooler shit. Call everyone together to prepare a trek into the woods, eager to see what interesting things might be around. I've always liked hiking despite having been a city slicker. Wait for the group to be collected before turning around to face the woods again, which at this point had been behind me while I waited for everyone to be ready. Walk a few yards towards the woods with my friends following behind me before noticing something that looks like an errant tree branch on the ground in front of us. Get closer and take notice of what it actually is. Entire back leg of what I'm assuming was a deer lying in the middle of this clearing. No signs of decomposition or coagulation of blood. Rip was flesh and was probably happened at the very least on the same day. Stand there staring at the leg, sort of dumbfounded while trying to imagine how it got there. Hear friends behind me murmuring to themselves. Realize the leg probably freaks them out a lot more than me because hardly any of them have had as much experience as I do with the wilderness, and turn towards them to quell their paranoia. Yeah, this is pretty strange, but it's honestly not that uncommon to find dead animal parts strewn about areas like this. I don't think it's really that big of a deal. A friend closest to me says, "Anon, look," and points ahead to what the rest of them are staring at. Look at where he's pointed and see tons of animal parts strewn about the edge of where the woods begin. Mostly various organs like livers and stomachs or intestines. Some are just unidentifiable masses of flesh with tufts of fur still attached. Wow, okay. The few girls that were with us get pretty freaked out and decide they want to walk back to the house. One of my bros cites the fact that the sun is starting to go down and escorts them back, but I think he was probably just also scared and didn't want to admit it. Me and 3 other bros remain and we start our expedition. I walk ahead of the other 3, trying to look confident and fearless, but secretly starting to feel really uneasy. A short distance from the entrance, we find a small creek and start following along its bank. My friends are tossing rocks into the creek while I'm enjoying the native wildlife we keep running into, just like bugs and birds and shit. Feeling of uneasiness subsides slightly. Start to hear low moaning noise deeper into the woods. Friends don't seem to notice, so I ignore it and keep following the creek while telling myself it's just some stupid fucking animal being a dick and making creepy noises for no reason. We had been walking for a good 20 minutes or so when I notice a rancid smell like fermented shit. Walk around the bend of the creek and see a mass on the ground about 12 yards away. Get close to it and discover it's a completely mangled body of a large cow. Looks like it's been there for months. Bones and its legs are broken, missing a lot of ribs. Face had been picked clean of all soft tissue. The low moaning noises have gotten loud enough at this point that my friends have finally noticed them. Decide that I don't want us to be stuck out there after dark and start to lead them back to the house. We get back and fuck around playing PlayStation or whatever for the rest of the night. None of my friends come back to the farm after that. Fast forward to about a week later. Various animal parts near the entrance of the woods were gone the next day, and I've been spending the last few days trying to relocate the corpse we ran into next to the creek with no luck. Walk around in the fields by myself, still trying to familiarize myself with the area. Not so much scared by the situation from last week, but more just confused. Nightfall finally comes and I start heading back towards the house. Walking around in the dark without a torch to the light of a full moon because I was a weird kid that liked doing that sort of shit. Make it to a field that had formerly been used as a plot for crops, can't remember what kind, by the previous farm owners. Walk down it for a minute while peering through the darkness and letting my eyes adjust to the moonlight. Stop when I hear some scuffling noises not too far ahead of me. Think for a second that my dog had gotten out and curse under my breath. Wait for a minute in silence, expecting him to run up to me while wagging his tail and smiling like a dumb fuck. Notice something moving across the field not more than 30 yards away. Not my fucking dog. Very clearly see some fucking really weird looking thing with pointed ears and an elongated snout crossing my path on all fours while moving in a way that reminded me of a deer trying to learn how to walk immediately after having been born. Only it doesn't look like a deer. More like a cobbled together toy of one. And it's fucking enormous. It doesn't seem to notice me as I watch it slowly meander away. I wait for it to be out of sight and silently sprint back to my house. Walk in and see my dog quietly lying in his bed. Don't mention it to my parents and just go to my room. Fast forward another couple of days. I've completely stopped exploring the property at this point and taken to spending all my time in the house, sitting in the living room downstairs, playing video games at around 8ish at night. Mom pokes her head in and asks me to drag the garbage out to the curb. Fuck me. Put on my shoes and go outside. The curb is a fair distance away from the house and I don't want to spend more time outside after dark than I need to, so I end up basically jogging to the curb while dragging this garbage can behind me on a gravel road, making a shit ton of noise and running back to my house as quickly as possible. Accomplish my chore without incident and continue playing video games. Get done playing games and retreat to my room for sleep. Have trouble dozing off and decide to light a candle and read a book. Bed is on the ground, hadn't bothered to set up the frame yet. Pushed up against the walls that are closest to the outside on the opposite end of the house where my parents are asleep, probably around 2 or 3 in the morning. Hear a light tapping at the window to the right and past the foot of my bed. Assume it's a tree branch or something and ignore it. Hear it again. God damn, this is a good book. Hear loud bang on the window that sounds like someone slapping it with an open palm. Get startled and think it's one of my parents outside spying on me, trying to get me to go to sleep. My grades have been starting to slip because I was staying up too late. Toss book off to the side of the bed and blow out the candle. Sit in silence for a moment. Hear the tapping noise again. Get really fucking scared. Reach over to the side of my bed to pick up a baseball bat I had lying next to it. Grip it for dear life, ready to beat something to hell and back. Sit in the dark for what felt like forever. Start hearing a dull scratching noise coming from behind the wall near the spot to the right of the window next to my feet. Shit. Listen helplessly as the noise starts to get louder. Like a lot fucking louder. Sounds like there's someone dragging a collection of industrial grade rakes along the outside of my wall. Pull my feet up and sit in the fetal position, still gripping the bat. Realize the noise is moving along the wall, getting closer to where I actually was on the bed. Listen to it drag along my right side, along the corner, and finally hover directly behind my head. Sitting there in disbelief at how goddamn loud it is, preparing myself mentally to die. Noise abruptly stops. Feel my heart about to pop out of my chest. Suddenly hear my dog barking. Jump out of my bed still holding my bat. Run to find my dog pointed at the side entrance of the house, barking loudly and growling. Try to calm him down. He's going totally apeshit. Hadn't ever seen him like that before. Mom comes downstairs to see what's up. I tell her that I think the dog saw a cat or something to kind of skirt the reality of what had just happened. Finally calm him down enough to get him to stop barking. Mom goes back upstairs, petting my dog while he continues to growl pretty viciously while still pointed at the door. Convinced myself that whatever I had heard in my room must have been a raccoon or something stupid, and that I should see if it's outside making my dog go crazy. Flip the switch for the side porch light and unlock the door, taking a breath before cracking it open slightly to peer outside. Look out to see a neatly placed severed pig's foot on the ground just within reach of the porch light. Shut the door and relock it. Sit at the door with my dog until morning. I lived there for another 10 years. After a while, I got over my astounding fears of the forest and started exploring the property again, but never went anywhere without my dog or stayed outside past dark. I'd find weird animal parts in random places from time to time and just got used to it after a while. Every now and then, my dog would start barking at something, and I would take that as his signal that we needed to go back inside. He lived for a pretty damn long time, like 15 years, but eventually died of old age. Within a week of that happening, I had moved out and gone to the opposite end of the country. I really miss him. In the mountains so far. Strong excitement, 35. Didn't happen to me, but happened to my mom in the late 60s. My mother grew up in New Hampshire, but was born in Virginia. One year when she was about 4, she was getting dressed in her snow clothes to go outside. She had a younger brother at this point when he was 3. My grandmother, her mom, would dress her and then go and dress her brother, and by the time she got back, my mom would have taken off all her snow clothes. So to fix this, she dressed my mom and stuck her outside with the dog right after. My mom just wandered off into the forest. They lived pretty much in the middle of nowhere at this point. The dog went with her, and then she was missing for 2 days. The dog returned home. They thought she was dead. And then they found her a couple miles away, sitting at the bottom of a hill, covered in dirt and just plain in the snow. She doesn't remember what happened, but I guess she was just missing and then found. Even though there were tons of search efforts the 2 days that she was missing. And like dogs and everything. And she was also missing a lot of her snow clothes, which were never found. Always gives me chills whenever she or my grandmother talks about it. Semi-truck driver toying with me late at night. No explanation for it. In December of 2015, I was making a north-south cross-country drive through the Midwestern United States. I was a university student at the time, a woman in my young 20s, driving home from the semester break. I was driving through South Kentucky on I-65 around 11:30 p.m., still about an hour away from the city where I was going to stop for the night. There were no other cars on the road at all, and I had not seen any for a while. That part of I-65 was a 6-lane divided highway, 3 lanes for each direction, in the area south of Mammoth Cave National Park and just northeast of Bowling Green, Kentucky. I was changing the music on my phone when I noticed an 18-wheeler coming up behind me in my rearview mirror. I stopped what I was doing, clicked off the phone, and waited for the truck to pass. The truck got right even with my car, and instead of completing the pass, matched my speed and stayed beside me. Then the driver turned on a spotlight on the side of my truck, which shone directly into the cabin of my car and on my face. I was really confused as I'd never seen a truck do anything like this before. The driver kept the light on my car for what seemed like a very long minute, and I was getting creeped out. I kept my gaze straight ahead. I slowed my speed so that the truck would finish passing me. The driver turned off the light and completed the pass, moving from the middle lane to the right lane in front of my car. I was very creeped out by this, slowed down some more, and changed to the leftmost lane to put some space between me and this big rig. As soon as I moved into the leftmost lane, the truck matched my speed again and moved into the middle lane to come parallel to my car. The driver turned on the light again, shining it directly into the passenger side of my car cabin. I am now confirmed that this truck driver was definitely following me and definitely being super creepy. I kept my gaze straight ahead because I felt like looking over would somehow make it worse. The truck turned off the spotlight and pulled in front of my car in the leftmost lane. I decided to move away again, changing lanes behind the truck back over to the rightmost lane and speeding up. I was probably going right around the speed limit again, 70 to 75 miles an hour. By the time I completed the merge, I saw the truck beginning to shift lanes towards me again and speeding up to match me. Before they could pull up next to me again, I decided it was time to get out of there, and I floored it. I sped up to maybe 90 miles an hour, the fastest I had ever driven in my life, and put maybe a mile of distance between me and the truck before slowing down some. I looked up to the rearview mirror, and I will never forget the image. This big orange tractor trailer, illuminated by the street lamps of the highway interchange, absolutely devouring the distance I had put between us. The truck was charging up behind me at an unbelievable speed. I sped up again, but it did not matter. The truck caught up to me, pulled beside me, and turned on the spotlight again. I stared straight ahead, keeping my speed, not daring to look over. It was at this time that I decided my only advantage was the maneuverability of my small car. I hit my brakes and dropped back behind the 18-wheeler, moving into the middle lane behind the truck. They moved over into the right lane, and I moved over behind them. I decided to stay right behind this truck in its blind spot so that they could not see me. I saw a sign for an exit and decided this is how I would escape. I waited behind the truck in its blind spot until we came up on the exit. I waited until the last possible moment. Once the truck body was beyond the point where the exit split ways, I darted out from behind the truck into the exit. Thoroughly shaken, I wondered how far away from the interstate I should go and if the truck would come looking for me. I ended up just pulling into a Wendy's right by the interstate. I parked and got out. I inspected my vehicle, looking to see if there was any damage, thinking maybe the driver was trying to warn me of something that was wrong with my car. There was nothing wrong with it. I waited at the Wendy's for a little while to make sure the truck was long gone before getting back on the interstate and continuing to my hotel. After the break, when I drove back to school, I did not use I-65.
Puppet. I used to be a pizza delivery driver. One night while making a delivery to a house, I witnessed something so disturbing that it made me never want to deliver pizza again. Trouble had a way of finding me from a young age. I often fell in with bad influences, which led to my horrible and oftentimes reckless choices. My illegal antics frequently brushed against the law. Countless close calls only fed my misguided sense of invincibility until one night when my so-called friends and I made a huge mistake. The sky was a bruised purple, punctured with a million tiny diamonds, as my friends and I, fueled by beer and the lingering buzz of weed, huddled in my neighbor's garage around a single flickering bare bulb after sneaking inside. The air hung heavy with a metallic tang of oil, and the distant hum of the fridge thumped like a low heartbeat. We had squeezed through a gap in the fence, the rough wood scraping against our skin, and settled into a circle in my neighbor's garage as if we owned the place. My parents were away on a weekend trip, mistakenly assuming I was responsible enough to stay out of trouble. My friends and I sparked up a fat blunt. The acrid smoke stung my throat as I took a huge drag, feeling like a cartoon dragon exhaling a billowing cloud that hung thick and stagnant in the still air. Whether it was the smoke or just bad luck, I lost my balance and stumbled back, sending a toolbox crashing to the floor with a deafening clatter. A pool of spilled solvent, previously unnoticed in the dim light, glinted ominously. The metal tools clanged against it, and a spark erupted, a tiny flicker that ballooned into a monstrous flame in an instant. Panic spread faster than the rapidly growing fire. My friends, their faces in fear, bolted past me, leaving me alone with a growing blaze. My lungs ached for fresh air. A desperate gasp, trapped into my smoke-filled chest. With a surge of adrenaline, I ignored the searing heat and threw open the garage door. There stood Mr. Smith, my neighbor, his furious gaze piercing through the disheveled frame of his bathrobe. Without a word, he grabbed my collar and hurled me onto the damp grass. Then he ran over to the fire extinguisher, his face grim with determination, and desperately attempted to save what remained of his burnt-up garage. Mr. Smith, his face flustered with anger and the smell of singed fabric clinging to his bathrobe, barked into his phone, reporting the fire and our trespass to the police. Sirens wailed in the distance, a growing sound that mirrored the knot of dread tightening in my stomach. The police arrived swiftly. My friends, eager to save their own skins, wasted no time pointing accusing fingers in my direction. From a legal perspective, the situation looked bleak. The authorities, their faces grim under the harsh glare of flashing squad car lights, classified my accidental arson as a criminal offense. The lack of intent mattered little in the face of the evidence. Trespassing, the remnants of the blunt, and the smoldering remains of the garage all painted a clear picture. The combination of our bad choices, trespassing, smoking weed, and the resulting fire left no wiggle room for leniency in the eyes of the law. The judge, a stern woman, pronounced my fate: 4 months in juvenile detention. Those months became an enforced period of introspection, a monotonous battle against regret within cold, sterile walls. Oppressive silence, the clang of metal doors, and the hollow thud of footsteps echoing my descent replaced the companionship I once craved. A month before completing my 4-month sentence, the courts granted me conditional release, under the agreement that I repay the repair costs from Mr. Smith's garage. Every hard-earned cent I made over the next year went toward that repayment, a constant reminder etched in both money and trust. The weight of my past clung to me like damp clothes, and I trudged forward, one paycheck at a time. The air hung heavy in the house, thick with disappointment and the unspoken weight of my mistake. Mom sat beside me, her hands quivering slightly as she navigated through a sea of job listings on the unsteady glow of the monitor. I knew she was mad, heartbroken even, but beneath the anger I saw love, a silent plea for me to understand the gravity of my actions. Dad, ever the pragmatist, sat across from us, a deep frown on his usually jovial face. Unlike Mom, his silence felt accusatory, a heavy weight that spoke volumes. The night went on, marked by the steady tapping of the keyboard. An hour in, we hit upon a job ad that looked promising. Pizza delivery driver wanted. It wasn't the dream job I'd hoped for, but it was a start. My parents felt the change too. They looked at each other. Mom's face lit up with hope, and Dad almost smiled. Mom, a whiz with words, polished my resume, turning it from a jumbled mess into a presentable document. Dad, seasoned by his own job interviews, coached me on how to behave during an interview, his stern questions a hard but essential practice. In that moment, their unspoken support spoke louder than any words ever could. A week later, I found myself outside Luigi's Loaves, its name flaking in red above the entrance. The air was rich with the classic scent of the old pizza place, a blend of sharp tomato, melting cheese, and the sizzle of pepperoni. In one corner, stacks of 4 coated boxes teetered, and the walls, adorned with faded posters, showed cartoon chefs tossing heaps of toppings with exaggerated enthusiasm. The gruff man who emerged from behind a swinging kitchen door wasn't the polished interviewer I'd envisioned. A flour-dusted apron clung to him like a second skin, and his voice boomed with a gruffness that could rival a foghorn. Desperation drowned in initial apprehension. I needed this chance. The interview itself was refreshingly short and to the point. It didn't delve into my past, didn't ask about the fire that still burned in my conscience. Instead, he focused on the essentials: age, driver's license, and the seeming impossible task of juggling a piping hot pizza and a temperamental GPS. It wasn't much, but in that moment, it felt like everything. This gruff man, with his flour-dusted apron and no-nonsense demeanor, had offered me a way to crawl out of my hole I dug for myself. The job itself wasn't a walk in the park, but it wasn't a disaster zone either. There were long stretches of downtime, with the occasional rush of orders that left me breathless and drenched in sweat. The base pay was a joke, barely enough to cover a week's worth of ramen noodles. Thankfully, there were tips. Those crisp bills tucked into sweaty palms or clinking in the bottom of the delivery bag, were my savior. Every penny went straight to Mr. Smith, a constant reminder of the debt hanging over my head. But the real challenge wasn't the physical demands or the meager pay. It was the customers. On paper, the job seemed simple. Deliver hot pizza, collect payments, smile politely. Reality, however, was a different beast entirely. Some folks were friendly, genuinely happy to see a pizza appear at the doorstep, but others, well, let's just say they could test the patience of a saint. A simple wrong turn or a slight delay could turn into a verbal maelstrom. I'd had doors slam in my face with enough force to rattle my teeth, endured accusations of stolen sodas with the indignation of a wronged king, and even faced down a few Karens demanding free pizzas for inconveniences real and imagined. Those moments made me question the very fabric of humanity, leaving me wondering if kindness was an extinct species. One night at work, the clock on the wall mocked me with its luminous green glow that seemed to say, almost there. Midnight had just struck, and the promise of freedom, a bed, a shower, anything but another delivery, hung close. Just as I was about to switch off the radio for the blissful silence of a closing shift, my boss's voice crackled to life. "One more delivery," he announced. I swallowed a sigh that threatened to be an all-out groan. 2 steaming pizzas were shoved into my arms, the cardboard boxes emitting a comforting warmth that instantly clashed with a dwindling patience. A greasy note stuck to the top held the address scrawled in messy handwriting and the delivery phone number that seemed to have more digits than usual. One glance at the GPS confirmed my suspicions. This delivery was far beyond the usual pizza radius, nestled deep into the heart of the quiet countryside. With a resigned sigh, I punched the address into the GPS, muttered a prayer to the tech gods for a decent route. The glowing screen pulsed with his suggestion, and the cheery voice announced a shortcut that promised a quicker route. Creek Road, or some variation of that, flashed across the screen, a name that conjured images of a peaceful farmland and maybe a friendly cow or two. Out on that side of town, the streetlights gave way to the blanket of inky blackness and the occasional twinkling star. Deciding which turnoff was actually Creek Road became a guessing game. The dense roads pressed in on both sides, their rustling leaves creating a symphony of gentle sounds. Each twist and turn on the road had me second-guessing myself. Was I headed in the right direction? Was I lost with a car full of rapidly cooling pizza? In a last-ditch effort, I pulled the car onto the gravel shoulder on the darkened road, the headlights casting long shadows that danced across the uneven ground. Grasping at the greasy note, I punched into the phone number scrawled across it. The silence stretched on, with the rhythmic chirping of crickets in the background, hidden in the roadside grass. Just as I was about to hang up, defeated, a gruff voice crackled through the receiver. It was low and deep, yet strangely laced with a gentle drawl. "Hello?" Relief washed over me like a tidal wave. "Hello, this is the pizza guy," I blurted out, my voice a touch higher than usual. "I'm having a bit of trouble finding your house." Another beat of silence followed. Then the man on the other end chuckled softly. "Don't worry, son," he drawled. "My driveway is easy to miss. Looks more like a dirt trail than anything else." He went on to describe the surroundings, his voice painting a picture with words. He mentioned a large oak tree with a tire swing hanging from a low branch and a rusty mailbox shaped like a red pickup truck. With renewed hope, I hung up the phone and gripped the steering wheel a little tighter, turning cautiously onto the narrow dirt trail. I navigated slowly, my headlights cutting through the darkness like a twin searchlights. The dust billowed behind the car, creating a hazy cloud that momentarily obscured the path ahead. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably closer to 30 seconds, a single-story house emerged from the gloom. It looked like a ranch-style dwelling, painted a warm yellow that seemed to glow ever so slightly in the darkness. A single light flickered in the window, casting a welcoming rectangle of golden light onto the porch swing. Clutching the 2 steaming pizzas, the cardboard boxes feeling pleasantly warm against my palms, I crunched across the gravel path towards the front door. No doorbell greeted me, so I wrapped my knuckles around the weathered wood, the sound echoing hollowly in the stiff night air. Muffled music, something old from the 1900s by the sound of it, filtered from within the house. Footsteps shuffled towards the door, a slow and deliberate rhythm that sent a shiver down my spine. The steps stopped abruptly. A beat of silence followed. Then the door creaked open, revealing only a sliver of darkness within.
A man peeked out from behind the door, his face hidden in shadow. The man behind the door seemed to be deliberately using it as a shield, his body hidden from sight. Hey, I stammered, the sudden silence thick and charged. Pizza delivery, right? Yep, that's me, rumbled the voice, instantly recognizable from our phone call. An awkward silence descended once more, the old scratchy music from another time providing the only distraction. Desperate to break the tension, I blurted out, Do you have the cash ready? Yes. Hold on a second, he mumbled. His voice warmed despite the odd tension in the air. He shuffled back, the music momentarily replaced by the soft creak of floorboards. As a gentle breeze nudged the door further open, a sliver of light illuminated the interior, revealing a glimpse of a cluttered living room. However, the visual revelation was quickly overpowered by a quick wave of putrid odor that slammed into me with the force of a brick to the face. The stench was unmistakable, a cloying, sickening sweetness that made my stomach churn and my eyes water. It was the smell of death, and it instantly overshadowed the old music playing from inside the house and the man's friendly demeanor. The seconds stretched into a thick, uncomfortable silence. I shifted my weight from one foot to the other, the sound of the crickets outside growing louder in the absence of any other noise. It was getting ridiculous. This whole delivery had been weird. With a growing sense of unease, I rapped my knuckles on the open doorway again. Sir, my voice sounded strained, even to my own ears. A muffled response came from somewhere deeper in the house. Could you just come inside to the kitchen, please? The request seemed so odd, so out of place that I blinked, momentarily convinced I'd misheard him. Can you repeat that? I asked, needing confirmation. Can you come inside the kitchen, please? He repeated, his voice a touch more incessant this time, a hint of urgency creeping in that sent a shiver down my spine. My gut lurched. That wasn't in the training manual. My boss had drilled into our heads to never enter a customer's house for safety and liability reasons. But in that moment, better judgment took a backseat to a misplaced sense of, well, I wasn't sure what to call it. Misplaced helpfulness, maybe? Against the gnawing voice of caution in my head, I found myself shrugging nonchalantly. I stepped cautiously into the house, the weathered floorboards groaning under my weight like the protest of a reluctant spirit. It wasn't just old, this house was a time capsule, each detail frozen in a snapshot of bygone era. The house was thick with the smell of dust and echoes of the past. The long, narrow interior stretched before me like a dimly lit tunnel. Dark hallways, their doorways shrouded in shadow, branched off to the left and the right like forgotten rooms in a labyrinth. The faded wallpaper clinging precariously to the walls boasted a swirling floral pattern in hues of dusty rose and tarnished gold. It was a design straight out of the 1930s dream, faded with the passage of time. In the corners, a tall grandfather clock stood sentinel, its ornate mahogany frame gleaming faintly in the dim light filtering through the half-open door. Its solemn presence was punctured by the rhythmic tick-tock of its pendulum, a steady heartbeat in the quiet house. Next to it, an old record player whirled to life, its needle whispering across the surface of a dusty vinyl record. A melody, melancholic and hauntingly beautiful, drifted from the speakers, a forgotten song from a long-lost time. To my right, an open doorway offered a tantalizing glimpse into the kitchen. An old cast iron stove, its once black belly worn smooth to a dull gray by countless meals, stood proudly against the far wall. Gleams of firelight danced in the chipped enamel surface, hinting at a pot simmering on its burner. A porcelain sink, its pristine white surface now yellowed and etched with the passage of years, nestled beneath a small window, framed by lace curtains that were more yellowed than white. The man's voice, warm and slightly raspy, called out from somewhere inside the kitchen, but I couldn't see him. As I turned my head to the left, a narrow hallway extended before me, its right side lined with closed doors. At the far end, a dim, flickering light casted an unsettling glow of an old woman dancing in the hallway. She was completely naked, her back to me. She swayed and danced slowly to the 1900s music that was being played on the record player in the living room. She was feeling herself. I don't mean that she was confident or anything. I mean that she was literally touching her body in this disturbing, erratic manner. Her moments were slow, almost dreamlike. As she swayed to the music filtering in from the living room,
It wasn't a sensual dance, but rather an erratic exploration of her own body. Her arms swooped and her hands fluttered, tracing lines among her skin in a way that sent a jolt of unease through me. In my time as a pizza delivery guy, I'd seen my fair share of oddballs. A naked lady dancing to odd music might sound funny to someone else, but what I was witnessing transcended humor. It was deeply unsettling. The way she moved was such a disconnect from the music, lost in a world of her own. Terror coiled in my gut as I wrenched my gaze away from the disturbing scene in the hallway. I nervously redirected my gaze to the kitchen, catching sight of the man, or at least what he allowed me to see of him. He was peeking around the corner now, his face concealed by the wall, body hidden. It was him again, but only a sliver of his face was visible, one eye staring at me with an unnerving intensity that made my skin crawl. My mind went utterly blank. All I could manage was a single, desperate question that tumbled out in a strangled whisper. "Do you have the money?" The response the man gave back was not what I expected. Instead of words, a sound erupted from the man's hidden form, a low, guttural chuckle that seemed to crawl up from somewhere deep within the earth. It wasn't laughter, not in any traditional sense. It was a vibration, deep and chilling, that resonated through my bones and made my hair stand on end. It was the sound of something primal, something lurking just beneath the surface of normalcy. Then, with a terrifying suddenness, the horrific laughter was cut short. "Get him, Mom!" The words exploded from the man's mouth, shattering the silence with a force that made me flinch. The volume and raw aggression were a shocking contrast to his previous monotone and soft voice. It was as if a switch had flipped, revealing a hidden fury beneath the calm exterior. My blood ran cold as the full weight of his words sank in. From the hallway of my left, a sound ripped through the air, the sound of rapid footsteps approaching. I whipped my head around just in time to see the naked woman, the one who had been dancing there moments ago, sprinting towards me. Her speed defied her age, propelled by terrifying urgency. Pure terror coursed through me, a shot of adrenaline that propelled me into action. Without a single wasted thought, I spun on my heel, that forgotten pizza boxes tumbling from my grasp with a clatter. The door, the only escape, seemed miles away. My legs pumped, an instinctive urge to flee overriding any thought of dignity. I flung the door open with a crash, the hinges groaning in protest, and practically dove through the threshold. Reaching the car, I fumbled with the keys, momentarily cursing my trembling hands. The door flew open and I virtually flung myself into the driver's seat, slamming it shut with another bone-jarring thud. In a heartbeat, the engine roared to life, the sound a beautiful symphony in the face of the chilling silence behind me. My foot slammed down on the gas pedal, and the car lurched forward, tires spitting gravel as it tore out of the driveway. As I sped away, the house receding rapidly in the rearview mirror, I couldn't resist a final glance back, bathed in the pale moonlight spilling through the open doorway. I saw them, the man and apparently his mom, both completely naked, their forms stark and unsettling against the dark interior. Their faces were obscured by shadow, but the intensity of their gazes seemed to pierce the distance, following me even as I put more and more space between us. Whatever was going on in that house was far from normal. I couldn't shake the overwhelming sense that their intentions were anything but innocent. It certainly wasn't about the pizza. Whatever secrets that house harbored, whatever abnormal dynamics existed between the man and his mom, I knew it was something I wanted no part of. I returned to work a few days later. The encounter at the house replaying in my mind on loop. Sharing my story with my coworkers was a mistake. Most of them laughed, just as I expected. "Man, you got chased by a naked old woman?" they joked. Their laughter felt hollow and insensitive, like a swarm of angry bees buzzing in my ears. Frustrated and shaken, I stormed into my boss's office, expressing my desire to never return to the job. He was aware of the court-mandated agreement and tried to persuade me to stay, saying, "If you don't have work to accommodate your neighbor's garage, you'll end right up back in juvie," he warned. The thought of juvenile detention didn't hold the same weight it once did, not compared to what I saw in that house. "I don't care," I blurted out. "I'd rather go back than continue working here." 4 weeks later, I finally landed a job at a local diner. The pay was decent, but after court fees and the court's mandated agreement to pay off my neighbor's garage, every penny counted. One night, on a late shift, the dinner wrapped me in its usual sensory tapestry. The
The sizzle of burgers on the grill, the dance of waitstaff weaving through patrons, the symphony of cutlery and crockery from the kitchen. As I cleaned a table marred by ketchup smears and abandoned fries, my phone vibrated against my leg. I retrieved it and greeted the caller with an inquisitive, "Hello?" Silence. Then ragged breath filled the receiver, shallow and strained. Normally, I would have hung up by now, but I faintly recognized something. The sound of music resonating in the static background of the call. I knew I'd heard the music before. I just couldn't remember where. I listened carefully, and it hit me like a ton of bricks when I realized that it was the same song. That old, scratchy tune from the early 1900s playing Goes Hunting Alone. I usually lurk on here, but back in June I started lurking here. Kept saying to myself I'd post my personal spooky encounter, but laziness got the best of me, but I'm waiting on a download, so might as well do it now. First time green texter, so bear with me. BWG cashier at a hunting supply shop. Old, probably late 40s, early 50s, man comes in every Friday. Always chats with me at the register. Actually like talking with him because he reminds me of my own gramps. Always actually plays video. Learned this one. He was talking about his grandson. One day after my shift ends, I'm sat on a bench outside the store smoking when he comes up to me. Sits next to me. We start chatting about life shit. I actually want to stay in touch with this guy, so we exchange phone numbers. Start hanging out every few weekends, just cracking a few beers back when he tells me hunting stories and shit. Blah, blah, blah. Skip ahead a bit. Wake up in the middle of the night. 16 missed calls from him, and he's calling me now. It's like 3 a.m., but I accept it. Groaning, gurgling, and something I can only describe as someone who doesn't know how to whistle, trying to whistle on the other end. I assume he's just really drunk. Go to hang up before a voice that is absolutely not his whispers my name over the line. Shit bricks and freeze up. He keeps repeating my name before bursting out into a hyena-like giggle. Hang up and can't get back to sleep. Thank God it's Friday. Next day at my job, he doesn't come in. Day after that, he doesn't come in. Getting honestly a little concerned about him. Third day, he finally comes in. He's slow, lethargic, clearly hasn't slept since I last saw him in person. "Hey, kid." Never called me kid before. Ask him immediately if something's wrong. He nods quietly. Tell him I'll talk with him after my shift. Once I'm out, I sit by the front with him. Ask him what the phone call was about. "What phone call?" Ask him if he's shitting me. Just looks at me concerned. Whatever. Ask him why he looks so bad. Explains he got lost out in the woods and during the time lost his phone and most of his hunting gear. He pauses for a second and looks at me with a very intense look. "Anon? What day is it?" Tell him the date. He just laughs and looks away. "I went on that hunting trip last night. I was out in those woods all day." "You're shitting me." "Nope." Tell him earnestly I'm not bullshitting him. Tell him he should see a doctor because something's not right. He sighs and agrees and walks off. End. Really. The guy's still around, doing fine actually, but I don't see him at work as much because he stopped hunting and hiking altogether. I told him about the other confession. I think my psychiatrist wants me dead. Hey Snook, I really like your videos and watch them a lot, especially all the confession videos. I don't know if you're going to read this and debated if I should send this or not, but I just need to get this off my chest. The story is a bit dark, but yeah, feel free to censor it if you post it. I feel like my psychiatrist wants me to commit S-word. He has been acting weirdly around me, especially during appointments without my mother. He tried switching my therapist after I told him that I can trust my current therapist and talk to him honestly. The first thing he told me in the appointment 8 days after my S-word attempt was to stop the drama and stop acting like a 5-year-old, even though I wasn't. He canceled my future therapy appointments after I tried to cut my finger off and had to get it stitched. He just brushed it aside after I said I'm not sure if I can keep myself safe. There are a few more examples, but I don't want to make this confession too long. The thing that completely convinced me that he wants me to die was after I told him I couldn't keep myself safe if he tried to put me in a psych ward against my consent, and he told me he will have an appointment with the psych ward in a week. The same appointment got delayed for no reason the week after. I already told my mother that I think he wants me to die, but she doesn't believe me and called me insane. I don't even know if my psychiatrist believes me that I struggle. Sometimes I think about cutting my finger off and eating it, just to prove my struggle, but I'm not sure if he would even care. Anyways, that's my confession. I wanted to apologize for my grammar since I'm not a native speaker, and if this gets posted, I hope you're all doing good and having a nice day. I care about you. Confession. I want my father to die. Because you are my baby. My mother had the most beautiful teeth. Her teeth are my first memory. I remember them, long and white and bared in a ferocious grin, shining under the full moon as she told me a story. Not a fairy tale or picture book, but the story. The story of how I'd come to her, or rather, how'd she come to me. When I was very small, too small to remember anything at all, my mother stole me from a man and took me to live in the forest. She stole me not as an act of love, but as an act of revenge. Though I was desperate to know, she never told me what needed revenge. One night, I finally asked, "Why won't you tell me?" "Because you're my baby," she whispered in her low, wet voice. She stroked my face with long fingers. Her teeth glittered under the stars, rich and pale as polished ivory. "My baby will never hear, or see, or know the cruelties that haunt me." Cruelty was not the only thing my mother knew that I did not, although it was the only thing she refused to teach me. My mother tried very hard to teach me everything else she knew. Unfortunately, I was a very poor pupil indeed. My mother was a remarkable huntress. She felled elk and bear effortlessly. Sometimes she slid into the lake without so much as a ripple, and returned hours later with a monstrous fish clamped in her jaws. Because hunting came so easily to her, Mother expected me to learn quickly. "Men hunt," she hissed. "They have always hunted. So shall you." But I could not hunt, not like her. My small, soft fingers were no match for her lethal claws. My clumsy little body, somehow so susceptible to both the heat and the cold, trailed after her like whip-like predators form. Mother caught deer and foxes with her beautiful teeth, striking from the shadows like a snake. By contrast, my dull teeth could not even crush rabbit bones. I persevered, but did not improve. One night, while Mother snaked through the shadows, communing with trees and evading the dark things prowling in the night, I curled up and wept. She found me that way, weak and weeping. I covered my eyes and held my breath. I knew it was useless. Mother could hear my heartbeat from the other side of the hill, so she surely knew I was crying. But that small scrap of pride was all I had. Mother stood there for a long time. Then she crept forward and covered me with fresh leaves before lying beside me. "I will feed you always," she whispered, "because you are my baby." In addition to hunting, my mother was a phenomenal creator of shelters. Sometimes she lived within the earth, snaking through loam and tree roots like treasure-hoarding dragons of old. Sometimes she lived in the trees. Many nights I watched in awe as her bones elongated and tore through her rough skin, stretching upward to twist among the branches like an ancient spider god. I would wait patiently, sometimes for hours, as Mother communed with the spirits buried in the roots, and sometimes she lived in the shadows, creeping through the darkness to flush out food and threat alike. So, Mother tried to teach me to dig burrows, but I could not dig like her. I was too small and too soft, and far too frightened of the bugs and moles that tunneled through the earth. So, she tried to teach me to live among the tree branches, to rest and listen as the redwoods murmured the long, strange histories of the earth. But my bones could not stretch like Mother's. I could not twist my arms to match the branches. My skin could not interlock with the tree bark, and my blood was too sluggish to melt into the sap. So Mother tried to teach me to live in the shadows, but the darkness terrified me. Every night, I hid and wept, imagining the legs of centipedes crawling across my skin. All the night, creatures reveled in my fear. Owls swooped down to taunt me, and bats torpedoed towards me, giggling in their shrill, squeaking voices until Mother slapped them out of the sky. Finally, Mother realized the futility of these lessons, so she dug a deep burrow just for me. She lined it with leaves and slurped the worms and roaches from the walls. When she finished, I burst into tears. "Why do you weep?" she rasped. "Because you do everything for me. I knew the laws of nature. I knew the laws of forest creatures and their young. Young that were weak were killed in the nest. Young that could not learn to fend for themselves or abandoned to die. I was weak and soft and coated in terrible, ugly scars. Why do you do everything for me?" Mother snaked forward, long, large hands sinking into the earth. She curled around me and pulled me close. "Because you are my baby. Mother did not always live in the burrow with me. She roamed the mountains. She burrowed with moles, slithered with snakes, grazed with elk, hunted with wolves, stood with trees. When I was very small, I thought she ate the forest, but it was not that simple. She protected it, and in return, it sustained her. My heart, she told me one rainy night, is the forest. So this is how it must be. As I grew older, I developed rudimentary survival skills. I shied away from hunting big game, elk and deer, bears and boar, because I did not protect the forest. I gave it nothing. I only took. So I took as little as I could. I trapped rabbits, fished the streams, and ate wild berries. I dared take nothing else. Once I could reliably feed myself, Mother stayed far away for long stretches. Hours, then days, and finally weeks. I missed her terribly, with a deep, panicky ache. I confronted her about it one balmy spring evening. You leave me more and more, I accused. Soon you'll leave me forever. Never, she murmured. A breeze twined around us, raising goose flesh on my skin and ripping her long white hair. I will never leave you. But you do, I screamed. You already do. Before you came, I lived among the trees, listening to their warnings. I slept in the warm earth as worms and centipedes nibbled my skin. I spent many of your lifetimes within the forest. Little one, so many lives at the same time that I forgot my own name. I do not leave you. I have left the forest for you. I didn't come here, I sobbed. You took me. I did, she said. So I will never leave you. When you think I've left, silence yourself and listen. Listen for me the way I listen for the trees, the animals, and the stars. If you're silent and you're sincere, you will hear me. And then she left. Fury and jealousy seared my heart like a wildfire. She insulted me. She humiliated me. And after all, that she left me for the centipedes and the wolves and the stupid, chittering bats. I don't need you, I screamed. An owl hooted angrily in response. I don't need you at all. Then I ran from my burrow. As the earthen door materialized before me, nodding with flowers and wild grasses, anger swelled inside me. It possessed me. This wild ball of misery born of my own endless fear and inadequacy. And it spoke to me. Why should you return to the burrow, it asked. Why indeed? It wasn't mine. It was Mother's. The entire forest belonged to Mother. Without her, the forest would have been consumed me long ago. So I turned away from the burrow and kept running. I will find the end of the forest, I decided. I will leave it once and for all. I ran for days, in the process treating the forest with contempt. I stripped the trees of their leaves to make nightly beds. I threw rocks at birds and rabbits. I uprooted bushes and stripped entire groves of their berries, eating until I threw up from sheer excess. Then I ate again, not out of hunger, not out of any need, but out of malice. And one day, long after spring ceded to summer in an verdant explosion of heat and greenery, I heard voices. I froze immediately. The only voice I knew was Mother's, wet and low, an earthy, rib-shaking whisper. These voices were nothing like Mother's. They were high and somehow infantile, with strange shrill notes. These voices, they were like mine. Trembling, I dropped low and crept through the underbrush. Sun-warmed leaves brushed against my face, smooth but painfully crisp. The sun was taking its toll on them. I snaked over the ground, pretending I was Mother, slipping through the forest like an invisible snake. I reached a break in the trees and peered through. In a small clearing were 4 creatures. They had pink skin and wore heavy clothes that looked suffocating. Their hands were small and soft. Their faces were smooth and baby-like, somehow half-formed, wide-eyed and rounded, with soft noses and plump flesh. I touched my face, flat and smooth, and looked down at myself, mud-streaked, deeply tanned, and marked with a hideous mass of scars, but still soft. Hairless, small, weak. There was no mistaking it. These things in the woods, these overdressed, half-formed beings with small teeth and no claws and overlarge eyes, were like me. They were men. I stood up, propelled by panicky excitement, and strode forward. All at once, they froze. What the hell, one whispered. He lifted something in his arms and pointed it at me. It was long and strange to me. Inorganic, not alive, with a wooden handle and a gleaming tube. Just then I realized something The forest was silent. A few birds chirped and sang, and a few bugs emitted their persistent drone. But the vast majority, birds, insects, trees, were silent. No rabbits, no deer, certainly no bears. These things, these creatures like me, these men, had silenced the earth. They'd stolen the forest from itself. We stared at each other for a long time as ever-growing summer heat filled the clearing like an invisible pool. "Mother," I whispered. "Mother, please help me." She did not, so I turned and ran. The men immediately pursued. I could hear them yelling, crushing the undergrowth, stamping on blossoms and bugs, snapping branches as they ran. The forest's deathly silence was worse than any cry. "There it is," one of them screamed. A second later, the forest exploded. A deafening boom shook the trees and ate through the air as pain erupted on my shoulder. I didn't dare stop or look. I pressed on, running and crying as the men came after me. The forest seemed to punish me for my earlier cruelty. Brambles scratched my legs, stones cut my feet, branches swiped at my face, leaving deep, stinging runnels. I thanked the forest for its kindness. I thanked it for punishing me, rather than stopping me. The men gasped and wailed amongst themselves. "What the hell is it?" I don't know. Is it a kid? Look at its face. Look at its fucking face. That isn't a kid." Something suddenly filled my ears, droning the sounds of the men in the forest. A deep musical rushing. The birdsong transformed into a turbulent river. And then Mother came, erupting from the trees like a great beast of old. But that's what she was, after all. A great beast. Surely a demon of the ancient world. She pounced upon the men, battling them the way a house cat bats its toys. She clamped one between her claws, squeezing until his head separated and went rolling across the ground. One by one, Mother caught and tore them, shredding them the way she shredded leaves before my bedding. Blood streaked the forest, turning the dirt to mud and dripping from the trees like sluggish rain. Mother dug her claws into the skull of the last survivor and cracked it open like a fruit. Blood and gray brain glistened in the sunlight. The man screamed and screamed and screamed. Mother leaned down and extended her tongue. It curled outward, pale and orange gold-like sunrise on a cold, clear morning, and delicately slurped his brains, curl by curl, like so many worms from my burrow walls. By the time he stopped screaming, the forest had returned to its loud, familiar glory. Murmuring trees, singing birds, skittering insects, grazing deer. I smiled and ran to Mother. She reared up and screamed. "See what you've done?" Terror paralyzed me. I looked helplessly at her. Blazing eyes, contorted face, runneled with earth and wildflowers. Sun-bleached bone and pale, spongy rot. My mother, my beautiful demon mother, who claimed me out of revenge and raised me out of obligation, staring at me like I was a man. When you stone a bird, my heart stops. When you break a branch, my bones snap. When you selfishly strip the shrubs of your fruit, of their very birthright, my skin blisters. When you hurt the forest, she roared, my heart bleeds. I fell to my knees and hid my face. Mother rushed forward on her many limbs and wrapped long fingers around my throat. She lifted me up, dangling me over the forest floor. "I killed men for you. Now more will come. They will trample, they will cut, they will burn, they will kill. They will kill the bears and the cougars and the wolves, for they will blame the predators for what I have done for you. Do you see?" She shook me. The carnage below seemed to swing beneath me, a tapestry of blood-soaked earth and ruined corpses. "Do you see?" "Yes, Mother," I whispered. "I see." She dropped me. I hit the ground with such a force it knocked the wind out of me. Mother pulled back and bruised herself with one of the corpses. I looked up, shaking. Birds watched from the trees, quick and curious and full of condemnation. I averted my eyes as tears spilled. Mother returned to me. She extended an arm and opened her hand. Upon her palm were 4 eyes and a large glistening heart. I stared at them blankly, then looked up at her. 4 eyes, she said, one from each man, in the heart of the one that shot you. Eat. My lip quivered. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the gore in my mother's hand. A heart and eyes, raw and plump, alive just minutes ago. "Mother," I said, "please." "Are you of me?" she asked. "Are you of man?" The forest became painfully silent, the animals, the trees, and the insects all waiting with bated breath. "I am of you, Mother." I plucked the first eye from her palm. It was round and curiously firm, with a sort of firm, watery texture I associated with half-rotten fruits. The pink, wormy optic nerve dangled. For a terrible moment I thought I would vomit. Then I raised it to my lips and bit in. The eyes were awful, the heart even worse, thick and almost impossible to chew. Mother had to tear it for me, slicing it into manageable pieces with her beautiful teeth. When I finished, Mother picked me up and, holding me tightly, shrieked back to the burrow as night fell. That night, I became ill. I shook and shivered and hallucinated for days. My mind bled with images of dangling eyes and glistening hearts and skulls cracked apart like pomegranates. Mother lay with me all the while, soothing me with ancient songs like bird song turned to rivers, and cooling me with her damp, earthy breath. Finally, the fever broke. I sat up, gasping as the last vestiges of my nightmare drifted away. Mother sat across the burrow, hunched over tiredly. "You are well," she said. "I am glad, for I must leave." I blinked tiredly. "Why?" "Men," she said. "But you killed them." "There are more," she said. "They crept into the forest, searching for their dead brethren. They are cutting the trees and crushing the flowers and killing the bears, my little one. If I don't stop them, they will even come for you. I have to stop them. My heart is the forest and so are you. I must protect both." A lump rose in my throat. Shame like I'd never known enveloped me. "I'm so sorry." "You are my baby. Babies must learn. By learning, they grow." "Mother," I said, "am I truly of man?" Mother closed her eyes for a long time. She did not speak. Then she drew a deep breath. "I took you from a cruel man. Listen, I will tell you now of the cruelties I endured." I listened, enraptured and horrified, as she spun her sorry tale. "Mother was once a young, beautiful human woman. Surely not more beautiful than you are now," I objected. "Listen," she said. "Mother was alone in the world. She had no family or friends. She once had a family, but they harmed her greatly, so she ran away. She lived in the forest in a small, ragged tent. She ate wild berries, fished the lake, and boiled water to drink. Laws are strange things. Though Mother hurt nothing and no one, she was breaking the law by living in the forest. She was found, and caught, and imprisoned, separated from the trees and the birds. Mother faded quickly. Though she was only jailed for a short while, it nearly killed her. The day she was released was the best day of her life, or so she thought. No sooner had Mother gathered her meager belongings and exited the jail than a guard came up beside her. "Where are you headed to?" he asked. "I'll take you wherever you want to go." Mother was ecstatic. "Take me back to the forest," she said. The guard obliged, driving her towards the woods. Except he stopped too soon. He stopped at a house. His house, it turned out. The guard was a terrible man. He trapped Mother. He hurt her, tortured her, abused her in every way. He cut her open, he burned her, he snapped her bones, and he put a baby in her. Mother was so broken that he missed all signs of impending childbirth. When I came, Mother died. He dumped me in a vat of acid, Mother told me, and scattered my liquid remains among the trees. But then I heard you. Mother smiled faintly. Crumbles of dirt and root fell from your face. I heard your cry, your need for me. I do not understand what Mother said next. It is difficult to translate, but the closest I can come in, everyone sings a song to those they love. Most aren't able to hear these songs. If you can't hear it, it can't help you. But if you can hear it, a song is the most powerful thing in the world. It kills, it calls, it consumes, it destroys, it strengthens, and sometimes it resurrects. When I reformed and breathed again, I stole you from your father, Mother said. Then I brought you here, because you are my baby. I wept silently because I didn't know what to say. I must go, she said. The trees and the animals need me now. So remember, little one, when you are silent and you are sincere, you will hear me. Then she whipped around, like a wolf, a snake, and hawk combined, and left. She did not return. At first I thought nothing of it. I had made a terrible mess. I had summoned men. I had caused the forest to bleed. Mother had a great deal of work ahead of her. But summer slowly bled into fall, and still Mother did not return. When the first snow came, dry and cold, skittering across the landscape like powder, I knew something was wrong. The snows deepened. The forest drifted into its winter sleep, cloaked in ice and fog. Every night I made myself silent. I mustered all the sincerity I could, and I listened for my mother's voice. It didn't come. I grew thin and sick. My skin burned even as I shivered. My chest grew congested. My throat so sore I couldn't sleep. My breath came in sharp, pain, wheezes. Soon I became too weak to leave the burrow. I crawled to the doorway and ate snow. For sustenance, I slurped worms from the earthen walls. It was not enough, and I knew it. Only then, in the quiet and peace and fear of approaching death, did I become truly silent. Only then did I hear the voice of my mother. I heard her in my dreams, the low, rushing voice like music made in water. "I am coming," she said. "I am coming because you are my baby." I smiled and slept. Next thing I knew, I was cold and wet and shivering, but awake. I shot up and screamed as my skin brushed the thick, flour-matted hide of my mother. I spun around, smiling, and froze. Mother lay beside me, panting. Blood seeped from 100 wounds, crusting her hair. The exposed bones in her face were crushed and concave, leaking gore and blood. Without opening her eyes, she smiled. "I heard you. I heard your song." Tears blurred my vision. My chest began to hitch. I couldn't draw breath. It was like I was sick again, drowning in pus and trapped fluid. Only I wasn't dying this time. My mother was. "Then stay," I said. "You have to stay because you can hear my song." "No," she said. "You needed to see me again, but you do not need me." "I need you, Mama. I need you." "No," she said. "I killed all who would harm you." "But what about the forest? The forest will kill me without you." She chuckled. Her breath came, terribly fast and increasingly weak. "You are of me. Remember, you are of me. You are my baby." My mother, my beautiful, ancient mother, drew a shallow breath and lay still. I lay beside her for many days. Then, when she began to stink, I left. A hiker eventually found me, a stupid, solitary hiker with a soft heart, a great deal of patience, and no fear. When I learned to speak the words of men, the authorities lost no time in telling me that mother was not really my mother. They discovered my identity, at least in a manner of speaking, through DNA. My real mother, they say, was a vagrant, a Jane Doe who lived in a tent in the national park. She was alone and defenseless, two things that attract human monsters. After a brief stint in jail for loitering, my mother ended up kidnapped, imprisoned, and tortured by an as yet unidentified assailant who eventually tried unsuccessfully to dissolve her in acid. They think he attempted to dissolve my body too. That's why I am covered in scars. It is why I frightened those hunters so long ago. The acid burns make me look like a monster to men. Since my real mother apparently died long ago, they decided that mother, whoever she was nothing but a crazy, homeless child abuser. But I know better. Even so, I adapted. I had no choice. I am of my mother, but I live among men. That's what animals must do. Their young learn, grow, and adapt. If they don't, they die. But I'm not adapting anymore. At least, I'm not adapting to live among men. My mouth is changing in ways that are terrible to people, but wonderful to me. It's my teeth, you see. I'm growing my mother's beautiful teeth. Looking at my teeth in the mirror was frightening and electrifying. Joy and terror ran through my veins in equal measure. It had to mean something. So I fell silent. I became sincere. I listened. And I heard. I heard the voice of my mother, low and rushing, like birdsong turned to a wild river. She tells me I do not belong with men, because I am of her heart, and her heart is the forest. She tells me I must return, and she tells me she is waiting for me.
How do I, 30 female, uninvite our creepy neighbor, 70s male, to my son's first birthday party? We moved into this house 3.5 months ago. Our neighbor across the street introduced himself right away. In the weeks/months following, we've chatted outside a few times a week. He's brought us food a handful of times. I baked him cookies for Christmas. He seems just like a typical older man/nice neighbor. We invited him to our son's first birthday, which is coming up soon. I sent out the invite and received a verbal confirmation that he's coming. This was 2 weeks ago. Since then, he's done and said some things that make me really uncomfortable, and I don't want him at the party anymore. Creepy thing number 1. He's been inviting us to happy hour since we moved in, saying he has a babysitter for us. I would just kind of ignore him on the babysitter front because my son is breastfed and doesn't take a bottle, and frankly, I'd find my own babysitter if I wanted to, which I don't. I haven't been away from my son since he was born, and I'm just not ready yet. We thought he just wanted to hang out, so my husband went out to lunch with him. He still insisted on happy hour / babysitter. So I invited him to our place for dinner, thinking he wanted to socialize with both of us. He declined, but continued pushing happy hour / babysitter. Then he brought this lady to our house unannounced to introduce us. I was polite and said hi, and they left. He kept bugging my husband about happy hour, so finally I said to him, "Okay, let's go. I'll bring the baby and wear him in a carrier." To which he responds, "Why don't you trust the lady I introduced you to?" I just explained the breastfeeding situation and used that as an excuse. So he basically keeps pushing this sitter on us. I don't think much of it until the other creepy things happened. Creepy thing number 2. He comes to our house the night of the happy hour, already a little buzzed, and makes a comment about how cute my son is and that he could possibly get $50 to $100 if he sold him. No one laughed. My husband said something like, "No, we're good," and he said he was joking and moved on. Creepy thing number 3. While out to happy hour, he asked how our son was sleeping. I said he still wakes frequently, and he responded by saying, "Well, you can just throw him in my spare bedroom tonight and pick him up in the morning." I gave a disgusted look, and he responds, "Sorry, I have a sick sense of humor." Creepy thing number 4. My husband was outside playing with our son, and the neighbor walks up and says hi, then immediately tries to pick the baby up. My husband basically intercepted the baby and turned away from the neighbor guy, who just started walking back to his house. He's never held our son before, and normal people usually ask first. Anyway, all of these things together weird me out. Pushing the babysitter super hard, making disturbing jokes, and trying to hold him without asking. Am I overreacting? I really don't want him at the party around my son. And then the OP posts an update, and let's get into it. After posting this, my husband and I decided next time we saw one of our neighbor outside, we would tell him the plans for the party had changed, and it was just family now. Well, 3 weeks passed, and we never ran into him once, which is unusual because he's retired and home all day. And so are we, because I'm a stay-at-home mom and my husband works from home. I'm certain after the awkward incident in the driveway, where he tried to pick our kid up and then scurried away, he was avoiding us, which I'm more than fine with. Realizing we weren't going to see him in person, I asked my husband to send him a text message explicitly uninviting him to a party. He wrote the words, "We are rescinding your invitation." The reason I wanted it to be explicit is because I took the advice from the post and spoke to the sheriff's office. They told me if we explicitly tell him to stay away and he doesn't, then they will come and help. Our neighbor never responded to the text message, and he didn't show up to the party. He has still been avoiding us as well, which is a big relief. Some people in the post told us to move, which just isn't going to happen. We just bought this house, and it's our first and hopefully only house. We saved for a decade, moved across the country, picked the best school district in a location with low taxes, privacy, and the recreation and weather we like. It's a beautiful, perfect house in a beautiful and perfect location. We are hoping this unhealthy, alcoholic, 70-something-year-old neighbor will either move or pass away sooner than later. He's mentioned moving to a closer to his honey, so fingers crossed. We've taken some other security measures. We installed 3 outdoor security cameras. We also had shades installed. New construction home and didn't come with window treatments. We have future plans to extend our fence to the front of our house and install a driveway gate, but we need to save some more money first. And like I said, I spoke to law enforcement. He's not registered as an SO in this county, and I couldn't find anything online regarding criminal activity either. They confirmed that his actions and comments were unusual and told me to call them if he ever comes by after we tell him not to. I also Facebook messaged his next door neighbor. He mentioned her and her daughter numerous times, but I never once saw them speak or say hi or anything. I thought mother to mother, maybe she could tell me more about him. Unfortunately, she never messaged me back and I never see her outside. We are extremely vigilant watching our son when we play in the front of the house, but we just had our backyard redone, so we won't have to be in the front anymore once the sod is settled. He's a big, healthy 12-month-old, and we aren't going to let
Dog signs keep appearing in my neighborhood, but the thing in the picture isn't a dog. I live in the middle of nowhere, Great Plains, aka northwestern South Dakota. It's not the worst place to live, I guess, if you like corn, but as you can imagine, not a lot goes on up here. Not much changes in my static little world. When something new emerges from the monotony, I take notice, as in the case of the sign I saw about 3 years ago. It was a Friday night in the late October, and I was driving home from a party at around 10 p.m. I had just reached the most isolated portion of my drive, a winding forest road that has more deer than cars using it on any given day, when my headlights illuminated a flyer posted to the trunk of an elm tree. As I passed by, I saw the words "Lost Dog" along with a photo, presumably of the animal in question. Now, the location of the flyer was already strange enough to give me a pause, but from my brief glimpse, the photo was even stranger. Maybe I was tired from a long day, or maybe the printer had messed up that particular flyer, but the picture hadn't looked like a dog at all. More so like a random assortment of shapes. Like I said, not much happens in my town, and the flyer was probably the most interesting thing that I'd seen all month. There was a turnout just after the elm, so I slowed down, pulled over, and stopped my car. I grabbed the flashlight I always kept in my console and got out to take a look. The flyer was even stranger up close. For one thing, there was no contact information, and the reward seemed exorbitant for another. The photo itself was also bizarre. Do you remember that AI-generated image shared on Twitter a couple years back with a caption, "Name one thing in this photo"? That's what the so-called dog reminded me of. A bunch of colors and shapes that looked like they should have been recognizable, but weren't. It had a short description of the dog beneath the photo. John, Shepherd mix, white coat, brown hood, blue eyes, $10,000. Weird name for a dog. I chalked it up to an art piece, which helped dispel some of the unease that had begun to build in me upon staring at the photo. A part of me wanted to take the flyer, but I didn't want to be selfish with the artist's work, so I contented myself with the photo. Just as I slipped my phone back into my pocket, the sound of snapping twigs made me start. Maybe the deer want to look at the art too, I thought, shining my flashlight into the trees. I waited for a moment, scanning the forest with bated breath. But even though it sounded like there was an animal right behind me, I saw nothing. I returned to my car after that and continued home. The next day, I gave my buddy Eric a call, hoping to catch him for drinks at our favorite brewery. Halfway through the call, I remembered the photo I'd taken of the lost dog flyer and opened my photo gallery so I could send it to him. To my disappointment, the photograph I'd taken was completely black. Either I'd had my thumb over the lens or the photo had somehow gotten corrupted. It was a little strange, but I'd never been very tech savvy, so I dismissed it to a glitch and told Eric where to look if he was ever returning to town from that direction. As it turned out, I didn't have to wait until my next out-of-town drive to see that flyer again. The following evening, Eric and I were walking back to our cars from the brewery. Across the street, stapled to a telephone pole, I noticed a familiar flyer and quickly pulled him over to point over the artwork. I was all smiles as I showed him, excited that someone was using our town as a canvas for their project, and even more excited that I'd been one of the first to notice it. The flyer was just as devoid of information as the first and featured the same abstract mess of shapes for its dog. Eric's always been more cultured than myself, more inclined to be interested in art history and that sort of thing, so I was interested to hear his take on the piece. When I turned to get his reaction, though, he looked more unsettled than amused. "What up?" I asked him. Instead of answering, he just shook his head. "Nah, man, you'll think I'm crazy." I tried pressing him a little bit more, but when it became clear that he wasn't going to divulge the source of his apprehension, I let it go. Before I continued towards my car, I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo of my shoes, which showed up in my photo gallery without issue. Then I pointed my phone at the flyer, aimed, and pressed the capture button. And nothing. Again, the photograph was completely black. When I got home that night, I went down a rabbit hole of anti-surveillance patterns, aka designs created for the express purpose of confusing cameras and facial recognition technology. Apparently, anti-surveillance fashion is already a big thing in some parts of the world. So it's likely that the Lost Dog artist used one of these patterns in their piece, explaining why I can't get a good photo of the flyer. It didn't explain Eric's reaction, though. I fell asleep wondering if my friend was seeing something that I wasn't. For the next few days, more lost dog signs continued to appear around town. Never in high traffic areas or obvious places. I found one behind the bleachers at the community soccer field, and another tucked behind a different flyer on a public bulletin board. Whoever this artist was, they were no Banksy. They seemed more keen to set up an Easter egg hunt than to make a bold public statement. On the following Saturday, while on a hike, I was surprised to find a found dog sign taped to a picnic table in a quiet clearing off on the main path. I was pleased at the sight. I was starting to think that the art project was meant to encourage the residents of our town to better appreciate their surroundings, and that my attention to detail was paying off as a result. Even more pleasing was the fact that this sign had a phone number to call on it. The sign had no picture, just the words "Found Dog John," along with the number. Out of curiosity, I gave it a call. After 3 rings, someone picked up. I said nothing at first, wondering if I was about to speak to the artists themselves or simply hear some kind of pre-recorded message. After a moment, I heard a very strange voice. "Looking for a dog?" it said. There was some kind of heavy filter on the voice. It was kind of staticky and guttural and seemed like it had been pitched down considerably. In a strange way, it reminded me of a large dog growling. "Yeah, I'm looking for John." "What's the word?" asked the voice. The word, I thought, looking over paper in front of me and trying to remember the exact phrase of the lost dog flyer. Presumably, there was some kind of key phrase I had missed. "Shepherd," I guessed, and the person on the other end on the phone hung up. I tried calling back, but they didn't answer again. I put my phone away, disappointed, and took a seat atop the picnic bench. The sun was beginning to set, and a cool breeze had begun to sweep in from the north, whistling as it wound its way through the trees. I lowered my eyes from the pink and orange sky, staring into the tree line at the far end of the clearing. There was an animal peeking out through the brush. It was difficult to tell what exactly it was at such a distance, but it looked like a coyote, which my state has no shortage of. It was standing eerily still. I raised my hand slightly and waved at the creature as I joked to myself. And then the thing stood up on 2 legs. It wasn't an animal at all, I realized, but a person, clad head to toe in black and wearing a dog mask over their face. The person turned their back to me and walked deeper into the trees. Needless to say, that was not a comforting thing to witness. I left quickly after that, half jogging back to my car and glancing over my shoulder every few minutes. If I'd seen a person in a dog mask trapezing through the forest a week ago, I would have laughed. I would have assumed they were some kind of LARPer, rare as those might be in rural South Dakota. After my strange phone call, though, the sightings felt more ominous than funny. Was that person I'd just been on a call with? If so, had they seriously just been standing there waiting for someone to see if their found dog flyer? The next day, as I visited my usual weekend haunts, I realized that the lost dog signs had been torn down. I guess that the art project had reached its end, even though it seemed like a remarkably short run. I was disappointed that nothing more had come from it, and that I would have never gotten answers regarding who was behind the flyers, but I probably would have moved on with my life and forgotten all about it if it weren't for the visitor I received that night. It was around midnight. I was at home playing video games and trying not to think about work in the morning when I got a text from Eric. Oddly enough, he asked if I would come over, and it was such an uncharacteristic request that I figured there was something wrong. I said yes, and he showed up at my door 20 minutes later. He looked like a wreck. His hair was disheveled, his eyes were red, and his whole demeanor was nervous and fidgety. When he walked up into my house, he held his phone in one hand and a rolled-up piece of paper in the other. "You're not going to believe me, man. You're going to think I'm crazy," he said after declining both my offers for a glass of water and for a seat on my couch. I assured him that he could trust me, that I would take his words seriously. After a moment, he unrolled the piece of paper in his hands to reveal one of the lost dog flyers. "This is me," he said. I was taken aback. "What? You made the signs?" "No." He tapped on the picture in the center of the flyer. "This is a photo of me." I looked back and forth between his face and the flyer. I squinted and I unfocused my eyes. I looked at the photo from different angles. No matter what I did, the dog in question didn't resemble a human being in the slightest, much less the familiar face of my friend. I gave what was probably a very awkward laugh. Okay, man, you got me." Very funny. Instead of breaking character and laughing along with me, Eric unlocked his phone and opened Instagram. Once in the app, he navigated to his profile and clicked on his most recent post, which was a selfie from last year. He held up his phone next to the flyer. It's hard to tell, but I swear to God if this is me. It's my last photo with a filter on it to break it down into shapes. You see this white part, the circle and the rectangle under it? That's my face and neck. And these dots, the little blue ones here and here, those are my eyes. And the brown part up here is my hair. I swear, I thought I was losing it, but everything lines up. I took the flyer and phone from his hands and tried to line up the shapes. I might have been the power of suggestion, but the more I looked between them, the more I started to see the match. Also, he's continued, since you showed me this flyer, I've been hearing all sorts of weird shit outside my house at night. I keep hearing these sounds like, I don't know, an animal or something. I thought a family of raccoons moved in, but it doesn't sound like raccoons. Have you checked for tracks? Yeah, but we've got a grass lawn right up to the porch. I see indents, but it's not like I can see marks. Eric shook his head. Last night, I could have sworn I heard people talking, but I couldn't tell you a thing that was said. Maybe these flyers had me paranoid. I thought about the person I'd seen on my hike, whether or not it was really an altered photo of Eric in the flyers. There was undoubtedly something strange going on in our town. I was quickly starting to regret wishing for some more excitement. Tell you what, I said. I've got some extra trail cams. How about tomorrow morning on my way to work, I stop by you and set some up? I'd like to get to the bottom of this as well. Eric accepted my offer and left my house a little calmer than he'd entered it. Just for the hell of it, before I went to sleep, I tried giving the number on the found dog flyer one more call. This time, I got an intercept message telling me that the number had been disconnected or was no longer in service. The next morning, I went to Eric's house as planned. I rang the doorbell and waited. When he didn't answer, I tried knocking instead. Still no answer. I waited for a total of 10 minutes outside his front door, knocking and sending him a few texts. I didn't immediately panic, as my friend was notorious for sleeping in and showing up to late events. I left him a voicemail stating that I had to leave for work, but would check in on him in the evening. It was only when I finished my workday and saw that my messages remained unread that I started to worry. I called his neighbor and asked her if she'd seen him, and when she said no, I asked her to do a wellness check of her own. Luckily, she had a spare key, and so I accompanied her to Eric's house. We didn't find Eric inside, nor did we find any signs of a struggle, but we found everything else. His keys, wallet, phone, even his shoes. It was that discovery that made me realize I had to get the authorities involved. Though I had never spoken to police before in all the years I'd lived here, I drove down to the station and reported my friend missing. It's been 3 years since Eric disappeared. In all this time, I haven't received any word from him, nor have the police been able to make any breakthroughs. I'm not sure if I should be happy or sad. On one hand, I'm grateful for the ambiguity. Who knows, maybe Eric eloped to the Bahamas with a gorgeous woman and is happily living out his days by the shore as we speak. On the other hand, the events leading up to his disappearance seem to point to something more sinister. Eric is a good friend of mine, and a good man besides, and I pray that wherever he is now, he's all right. The years have gone by in a blink. This town has always been oppressively unexciting, even more so now than the one guy who could kick my ass in billiards has dropped off the face of the earth. Not much changes in my static little world, but when something new emerges from the monotony, I take notice, as in the case of this sign I saw last night. It was early in the morning, and I was taking the Old Forest Road back into town from a friend's party. Same emptiness, same stretch of road. It might have been the exact same elm, too. In any case, as I drove in silence, a lost dog sign caught my eye. Posted against a tree at the edge of the road, It read, John, Shepherd mix, white coat, brown hood, brown eyes, $10,000. Beneath the text was a photo. Though abstract and blocky, I couldn't help but note a striking similarity between it and the last photo of myself I posted online.